Has a person ever disappeared in front of your eyes? Could a major disaster cause hundreds of ghosts? Does a confusion of death infect the living? Today we test the believability of the ghosts of the Japanese tsunami.
Welcome to Believing the Bizarre,
Where we dive into the unknown and the unusual.
and tell you whether or not we find it believable.
That's right. Japan again.
Japan, you say that like, oh my God, we're here again?
I love Japan. I'm infatuated.
Yeah.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, that's okay. That's good. No, listen, we are, in many ways, we make up a very nice puzzle because there are things that we both love, and then there's things you're more interested in, there's things I'm more interested in, and that's really good because things that you readily lean towards topic-wise are things I wouldn't, so which is a plus for our audience, and things that you wouldn't lean towards I do, which is a plus for our audience. So
I agree.
We're broadening the scope of things we talk about.
But here's the thing. I think you'd be very interested in this topic. I think you will be.
It's a little bit of science in terms of it. Not science. It's a little bit of natural disaster.
A little bit.
Well, a lot of it, I would say. It's tsunami.
It's mostly about the aftermath.
But still, it's caused by.
It is. Yes, it is.
It's like the dinosaurs going extinct.
Yeah, this is kind of like what could happen after Yellowstone.
Yeah. In a way. Like, it would be this topic, but based on people who passed away due to, it'd be like Pompeii.
Yeah.
Ghosts of Pompeii.
So this goes into the very specific tsunami that happened in Japan in 2011 on March 11th. Do you know much about this tsunami or no? Is this like brand new territory?
No, not brand new. I've seen videos because it's not like exactly what you think it is, like in like the horror movies or the like the Day After Tomorrow, where it's like a mass, but it's just like you see photos of just like not like the 500 million foot high wave of water, but like the water just
not quite that high.
Water gushing through the city.
Yeah,
like,
that's terrifying.
Flipping over vehicles and people running. And
I was watching the Unsolved Mysteries episode about this. Mm-hmm. Not one word in English. It's all
subtitles
Japanese.
on.
You have to. Or at least as far as I got, there was no English. I was like, this is kind of frustrating because I wanted to listen to it as I drove today.
Yeah.
Not possible.
You stopped 1 minute before, like, all right, we're going to switch to English for the remainder of this
I know,
audio
right?
drama.
But the thing about the tsunami is we're going to cover what it actually is briefly, and then we're going to talk about the aftermath, what's left over, the death and destruction. So you ready to get into this?
Yeah, let's go.
So Japan has a long history of tsunamis, which means like literally harbor wave. And tsunamis are triggered by earthquakes, typically. Because it's like if you have a little pot, right? Mm-hmm. And then you set off a firecracker in the middle of it, it's going to displace a lot of water, if that makes sense. Do you follow what I'm saying?
So you're saying the earthquake is the firecracker.
The earthquake is the firecracker.
Somebody's lighting firecrackers out
volcano.
there in the water and saying, let's see what happens.
Yeah, it's God.
Yeah.
Either an earthquake or a volcano can set off this giant wave that comes in. And I know, I actually didn't see this in my research, but I know if you see the water go really far in,
you know it's coming back.
It's because what comes comes.
So how long of a warning is there for something like a tsunami?
Basically, if you know the earthquake's going to come or the volcano is going to happen, that's about as long as you get, which is not very long.
Well, there's ways to test, obviously, seismic activity, but I don't know how much or how often people are checking the ocean. Was this specific earthquake and tsunami, was this like unannounced, or did people have time to prepare?
They didn't really have time. It just kind of happened. Like there was videos in the episode I watched of the Mystery Series Universe, and there were just people like living their lives, cashier girls, people checking out of the grocery store, and like
it's the minimum wage workers is what you're saying.
Well, the businesses too, like they had computers, stuff fell all over, and like you could see it's a bad earthquake. This is a magnitude 9
On the Richter scale.
that shook the coast of Japan. And it was 81 miles east of Sendai, which is the largest city in the Tohoku region of Japan, which is more north than Tokyo. And I think it's on its own separate island from Tokyo because Japan is made up of islands. And it's a more northern section. And this tsunami hits this northern section. The earthquake that made the tsunami, like I said, is the largest one they've ever had. I don't know if I said that. Did I say that?
You said it was a 9, but...
It's the largest they've ever had. Been recorded in Japanese history. And it made a wave that was up to around 40 meters high, or about 132 feet. I can't even process that.
132. 132 feet. That's like a little more than 1/4 of Top Thrill Dragster.
That's not that.
That's not that bad. But it's like a whole, you know...
A whole thing behind it, yeah.
Well, a whole wave, you know, it's like the length of the coast, right? It's not like
the
side. Like, it's not like the width of Top Thrill Dragster for those that have been to Cedar Point in Ohio.
No, how tall is Top Thrill?
It's shut down now, but it was 420 feet.
Oh wow, that's pretty high.
125 miles per hour. Great roller coaster. Rest in peace.
So there was a lot of mass property destruction, causing 450,000 homeless people, injuring 60,000 people, over 60,000 people, killing almost 20,000 people, and over 2,000 people went missing. Still are missing, presumed dead.
That's just tragedy. That's a natural disaster. Nothing you can do. Can't blame anyone.
Yeah.
And not to make light of it, but when you were talking about the businesses and the insurance, it made me think of the Family Guy, where it's like the guy that has the building with all the different, I think they're lamps or clocks or something. And he's like, I'm quitting my insurance. I paid for 40 years and nothing's ever happened. And then like Peter and everyone just bust in. It's like, I imagine the person that's just like, I don't need insurance. And then this huge wave just.
I wonder, tsunami must be covered under insurance.
I think there's certain areas that have certain natural disaster insurance policies that others, like we don't really probably have tornado ones, but we do have flash flood here.
Yeah.
But you know, if you live in Kansas, you're probably gonna have tornado. If you live in North Carolina, maybe there's something for
might just be classified as act of God kind of stuff. Yeah.
Dampness.
That was my side story. I got in my first car accident when I was in high school, and it was snowing really badly when it happened, so I slid. And they called it an act of God on the ticket.
Jeez.
And I was like, okay, it wasn't me at all.
It was God.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's people that like went to their basement because they're like, it's waterproofed.
I hope not. That would be terrible. Because like you said, you saw the footage. There's water flowing everywhere. It's terrible. Mm-hmm. Houses moving.
Yeah.
Like not cars, houses.
Yeah.
Roads, buildings, and businesses were taken away by the waves. It also caused the meltdown of 3 nuclear reactors and in turn released radioactive and toxic materials into the environment. And this also caused thousands to relocate. This event, leaving so many dead, left hundreds of reports of ghosts in the aftermath. Another factor that could lead to the appearances or the apparitions of these ghosts is the fact that all these bodies that they found were buried instead of the traditional Japanese funeral, cremation. They actually didn't do it because they didn't have any power because the nuclear reactors were offline. Mm. So they actually went back, they dug them up, and then they burned them after.
Well, at least they tried.
They did try. So with the breakdown of what actually happened, basically, let's move on to some encounters. So before we get into the actual, encounter, I forgot the word for encounter.
The real information, none of that science crap.
The fun stuff. My sources are National Geographic, Wikipedia, good old-fashioned Wikipedia, NPR, a guy named Perry.
He
wrote a book called Ghosts of Tsunami, and he talked about it on a Cosmopolitan, so we're getting from that too.
Yes. Is there a survey at the end about like the perfect like undergarment to wear?
Perfect ghost makeup to make?
Yeah.
No, I didn't take the survey. We also have The Mirror and All That's Interesting. And then there's a study from a girl named Kudo who wrote for a college. And This is also from that study. So those are basically my sources for this episode.
Let's go.
First one, This one is also from the book from Perry. And this is an interview with him about one of the stories in the book. And they talk to him on NPR. And he goes like this, quote, "Yes, Takashi Ono is not his real name, but he didn't want to identify himself by his real name. He was a man, a very nice man, ordinarily kind, who lived in the same town as the Reverend Kadena." And side topic, Kadena is the man who comes later into this picture because he exorcises him.
He's not an Air Force base.
No, just the same name. Back to the quote. "The tsunami was miles away, and he became aware that it was pretty bad after a week or so, and he decided to go down to have a look. And he drove down to the beach, and he was appalled by what he saw there. He had no idea the devastation was so bad, but he came back that evening, sat down for dinner with his family, had his tea, a can of beer, and then began rolling around on the ground, making animal noises, running out into the field behind his house, rolling into the mud, to the horror of his wife and his mother. He woke up the next day not knowing anything about this, and this continued for 3 days. He was talking in a strange, guttural way, threatening violence, and talking about the dead. His family were beside themselves, and they eventually persuaded him to go to the priest, who recited the Buddhist sutras and drove out these spirits. And he felt a lot better soon after that." End quote. So some more context to that basically is he became possessed by the ghosts of the tsunami.
Wow. That is not the type of encounter I was expecting.
No.
I was thinking like you're walking down the street and you turn around a corner and you see like someone who looks misplaced and drenched and you look back and they're gone. Not like being possessed. But what's interesting is this goes back to, what episode was it? Mary Roth.
Yeah, the possession
Mary Roth. Who was it? With the head Venom.
Venom, yeah.
Laurency Venom.
Because it's a great name.
Well, yeah. So it's a human being possessed by another human spirit.
It's funny too, because when we did the episode, I knew about this. I didn't put those things together.
Well, the connection wouldn't.
Yeah, but you're right. This is also another possession of a human to a human.
It feels like that type of spirit that just like wants someone else to know what they were dealing with. They had such a hard time grasping that they clung on to any kind of human connection. Mm-hmm. It's funny because it's not the only case of this in what I found. Oof.
I'll skip to the next one. Okay. So at the beginning of Unsolved Mysteries, there's a Buddhist monk, possibly the same one, telling a quick story about a man that had a spirit inside of him. And he asked the spirit what his name was. And all the spirit said was, quote, "I am at the bottom of the ocean." End quote. Mm. And it's telling where the mental state of the ghost is, because it knows where it is, and yet it's still there. It's creepy. It's creepy in a way because it's hard to help that kind of person, I think.
Yeah. And I wonder if it really is like somebody's physical body who got like pulled back into the ocean, or if it's just somebody who drowned and feels as though they were on the bottom of the ocean, which could have been anywhere. I
have no way of knowing. Yeah. I would assume it's the physical body that's in the ocean trying to find some kind of rest, because they're not going to get cremated, they're going to get found.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So those are a couple cases of people being possessed. Let's move on to some actual sightings.
Hey, what's up, Bizarros? Y'all want to go on a skinwalker hunt with us? Okay, just kidding. Well, kind of. Let me ask you, are you familiar with the mysterious ranch in Utah known famously as Skinwalker Ranch? Okay, y'all know that history is not my thing, but let me break this down real quick for those of you that don't know. About 20 years ago, Dr. Keller and veteran journalist George Knapp literally started a paranormal phenomenon with their groundbreaking investigation of this ranch, which included cattle mutilations, UFO sightings, and strange, unidentifiable creatures. All of it was documented in the book, Hunt for the Skinwalker. Now, the authors have partnered with the iconic comic book publisher Boom Studios to celebrate this milestone 20th anniversary. The outcome is a Kickstarter for an amazing graphic novel inspired by the incredible true story of their paranormal investigation. Boom Studios even got the writer from X-Men Unlimited to help construct the story and visualize many of the mysterious incidents for the very first time. If you love all things unknown and unusual and want to own a piece of paranormal history, this graphic novel's for you. But you gotta act fast. Order reserves end June 6th, which is coming up, and they're only making 375 copies. That's it. So go to boomstud, boomstud.io/skinwalker, and not only will you get the brand new graphic novel, you also get a declassified hardcover edition of the original Hunt for the Skinwalker. Again, that's boomstud.io/skinwalker. And reserve your copy of the graphic novel Hunt for the Skinwalker today.
All right, this one's pretty good. This is a excerpt from Perry's book. This was not featured in the show, but they talked about this in the Cosmopolitan because it's pretty incredible. So, I'll quote, at an Okawa elementary school, of the 75 students who died while at school during the tsunami, 74 were from Okawa. An unsettling truth that led parents to rail against larger bureaucratic facilities. One Japanese magazine reported that after the disaster, kids would dare one another to travel to the elementary school grounds in search of students' ghosts. One mother from an Okawa student consulted a psychic, Perry reported. They traveled together to the school grounds, and after the mother tried decoordinations into the surrounding bamboo trees, the psychic told her that the deceased children were, quote, delighted with them. But he also described the horrifying scene of the veneer between life and death, describing that the dead were, quote, crawling on the grounds near the school. Some of them were stuck in the water, covered in mud, and swallowing the dirty water in terrible suffering. Some of them were trapped and trying to get out. The mother described to Perry. End quote. Ugh.
That's just horrifying.
Yeah. A lot of kids. I mean, it happened during the day. There was an elementary school was in session.
Man, I mean, that's everyone. I feel like anyone who died, it was in a traumatic way. But when you hear about things like that and you get like the details.
Yeah. That one struck me as just scary because of the crawling around the grounds. Like, they're crawling.
Mm-hmm. Mm. It's like one of those, like if it was a jump scare, right? Like if there's like a psychic person in a movie and you don't see their perspective typically, and then the friend's like, why are you looking off the distance? What are you seeing? And there's just like a glimpse of them seeing the kids like crawling and just like, oh.
Yeah, you can almost picture it. Like, I'm surprised there's not a movie about it.
It's like those are the type of like painful, terrible ways to go that you don't really think about. Like for some reason, I was looking up YouTube videos on like tornadoes and things like that. And it was like, there was one story about like this guy that like, he didn't have a chance to go anywhere. So he laid flat because, you know, you're supposed to lay flat or be as flat as you can because of the tornado. And like the tornado didn't pick him up, but because there was so much hail and rain from the tornado, he actually drowned laying down. Like, it's just one of those things that you just think about and you're like, oh my God. Like, it's just, it sucks.
Yeah. This next story is from The Mirror, and it goes like this. Quote, for a father of two, Yamada, the frightening phenomenon following the tsunami seemed all too real when he and his children tried to rebuild their lives. He had escaped the waves that destroyed his home and later salvaged 2 Buddhist statues from the wreckage. But when he brought them back to his temporary housing where he lived, he said strange things began to happen. He claimed that his 2 children suddenly got sick and inexplicably chill seemed to follow the family through the house, he said. Yamada explained a couple of times when he was lying in bed, he felt something walking across him, stepping across his chest. The worried dad, along with many others in the afternoon, in the aftermath of the tsunami, felt there was only one place he could turn to, an exorcist. End quote.
What makes you wonder what happened?
He got an exorcist.
And it's good?
Yeah, it was cool after that because he got a Buddhist exorcism. And those are the best quotes, so I stopped it there. He's all right. He's fine.
It's all good.
He made it out of the movie. So that one's also really creepy, though, because I don't mean stereotypical, but they sleep on the floor in Japan, and there's ghosts walking over them. It's just these experiences bring up such creepy, confusing descriptions of death to me. Like, they don't know they're dead, really. Like, these ghosts that are acting like they own the place because they think they are in their homes.
Yeah, it's one of those instances of like a widespread tragedy where so many people lost their lives, and it's like they don't happen all the time, so they're huge. But also, it's like one of those things where, like, kind of like how 9/11 impacted so much the United States, like this tsunami impacted so much of Japan that, like, in terms of like the collective unconscious, everyone was going through it. It's like for days after, nobody was like, oh, I forgot about that tsunami.
Right.
Like, it was front of mind. So I feel like even like everybody was already feeling the sorrow. Everyone was already feeling the tragedy.
Yeah.
And then along, like, pairing that with all these traumatic deaths and these spirits that might not know what's happening or where they are, it makes sense in a way. If you believe in this stuff, it makes sense that a lot of these encounters would be happening. But that doesn't make it like you don't prepare for that. You know,
you can't,
it's creepy.
really. It reminds me of what could have happened, and maybe did happen in the wake of Katrina.
Mm-hmm.
So this one is from All That's Interesting, which I love. Have you used them?
Off the top of my head, I can't remember. That doesn't mean I haven't, but they're not one of the ones that I repeatedly see.
It's one I've used multiple times. They're a fun source. They're good. They're good at writing.
Yeah.
And they used the Unsolved Mysteries, which cited the work from Yuka Kudo, who wrote her paper for Tohokuo Gakken University.
Gotcha. Cool.
I probably butchered that, to be honest, but I looked it up.
Her thesis?
Yeah. But she wrote about, like, the people seeing ghosts, and she's got two.
Her professor's like, I can't pass you. This is calculus, but it's a damn good read. Damn good.
I do believe in ghosts. So.
That is spooky.
But this one's got some pretty famous. There's got two encounters from her. And the first one goes like this. Quote, the first cabbie told Kudo of an encounter he had in the summer of 2011. It had only been a few months since the tsunami, and there were barely any customers. He was naturally shocked to suddenly spot a young woman hailing him down in a particularly hard-hit area. Waving a heavy wintered coat in the middle of the summer, the figure was completely drenched. The driver barely had time to realize that it hadn't rained in days before she climbed into the back seat and asked to be driven to the largely abandoned Medina district. Quote, that area is almost empty, he said, while switching on the meter. Are you sure? There was a long silence. Then a shivering voice, the woman asked, have I died? The terrified driver turned around to face the customer, but he found absolutely nothing, nor anyone in his car. End quote.
No payment.
No, well, he didn't go anywhere.
That's true.
Another cabbie told Kudo that he picked up a confused-looking man in his 20s who kept pointing forward when asked where he needed to go. Finally, he simply said, Harinima, a mountain park near the city. After careening up the mountain near Ishimoka, the driver dropped his customer on the plateau of the summit. But when he turned around to be paid, there was nobody in the car. So that ghost got a free ride.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, ghost like, thanks, bro.
So there are hundreds of, like, really short stories, like things of people like see parts of the city that are like the beach is like laid out with hundreds of ghosts 1 second, and they look back and it's gone.
That would be insane.
Yeah. There's been several accounts of that kind of phenomenon.
Are these all like pretty shortly after?
Yes. Months.
Okay.
There's a Buddhist idea that the body needs 4 to 7 days to realize that it's dead.
Yeah.
And in between, there's that confusion. That's why they practice their funerals so quickly. There's also
4 to 7 days to know you're dead, but you need 21 days to build a habit. Our bodies are ridiculous.
I don't know, man. There's a story of a woman looking in a puddle, and when she looks in the puddle, she sees a man's face, and then she looked back and it's gone. Stuff like that is all kinds of around this tsunami. I'm out of encounters now, but there are more. If you want to keep looking, I recommend it. But with that, let's move to the discussion.
Before we get to the discussion, we'd like to stop the episode and thank our newest patrons as of the recording of this podcast: Ethan, Kay, Charlotte, Lauren, Joseph, Nick, and Jay. Now, you might expect to hear Charlie's beautiful voice in here since he has returned from Scotland, but as of the recording of this part of this episode, he still wasn't able to make it in, so you're stuck with me. But I'll make this quick because y'all already know. I know you guys have heard before. I'm going to run through a couple of things that we do on Patreon that I'm really excited about, and by a couple, I mean pretty much everything. We have ringtones. We do free, ad-free episodes. So if you're sick of all those ads you're hearing, you can get ad-free versions on our Patreon. We do shoutouts, as you just heard literally right before this, quizzes, fun segments like Do You Believe the Bizarre, Beyond the Bizarre. We interview the folks that submit their stories to us to get more behind the scenes info, things that maybe we didn't talk about, things that they forgot to mention when they submitted their story to us. We watch movies together with listeners on Netflix through the Teleparty app. We have a shirt that goes out to our dedicated tier members that you do not buy. Literally, you're a member for 3 months, and we send it to you. We have director's cuts, Google Hangouts, where we shoot the breeze for an hour with our dedicated tier patrons. There's so much content. We love doing it. Obviously, we wouldn't do it if we didn't like it. It's kind of like our place to do content that we know maybe wouldn't appeal to everyone or as much on like this main channel where we go into the episodes, but it's still stuff that we'd like to do or like to talk about. So that's reserved for Patreon. Every other month we're talking about new ideas, and sneak peek coming up in July. I guess it's not really, it's more of a tease than a sneak peek, but coming up in July we have some new Patreon stuff coming, and potentially, maybe, probably, very likely a whole new tier. So we're really excited about that. That'll probably be announced around the time of our 3-year anniversary, which is early July. So stay tuned for that. But like I said, tons of bonus content, tons of exciting stuff over on Patreon. So if you like the podcast and you're all caught up and you're looking for a little bit more, highly recommend. There's multiple tiers, and we're pretty proud of what we're putting out there. But with that said, let's get back to the main episode.
So, the ghosts of the Japanese tsunami. What do you think? Well, what do you think it could happen? I know you're already biased. You believe in ghosts.
Yeah, I am. And it's one of those things where, I mean, we've talked about before, when there's a massive tragedy, it makes you feel like whether, whatever a spirit is, whether it's soul, whether it's energy, the idea of it lasting and lingering because of such a traumatic death. And this is so wide scale. I mean, it's a country.
Huge. Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah. So, and the only thing working against it would be that it's so front of mind in a way where I think people are already in a state of mind of, on edge, panicked, frantic. Probably, most people probably lost someone they know.
Yeah.
I guess I shouldn't say that. It's
at
pretty
least in
huge.
the area. I think it's pretty fair.
In the area, yes. In the country,
Yeah.
But so I guess on the devil's advocate, you could say everybody was in a state of mind that was a little on edge, where maybe they were like looking for things, or that it's more susceptible to seeing things that maybe weren't there. But I believe this stuff. I believe it, whether it's the United States or Japan, like ghost stories, and it fits the tragedy. It's timely. And it's so many different people, and it's so many different ways. Like seeing someone's reflection in water, like, okay, maybe that.
Yeah, maybe that one's it's just like front of mind.
But,
or even the people on the beach. Maybe that's just, I don't want to say hallucination, but a figment for a moment.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe not. I don't know. But I think when you look at the different variations and the things people are finding out and the things people are saying, and like the cab drivers and that creepiness, and
especially the cab driver that lost a fare because of it. Mm-hmm. And the guy just pointing, and he finally goes up to this plateau, and no one's there. I'd be so mad.
It is a lot of relying on other people to like let them know, like this, like they're relying heavily on psychics, and things like that to relay information. But it's also people driven to a scenario where they feel like they have to like get an exorcism or something like that.
Yeah, because there's two by the Buddhist priests, at least two exorcisms because of these angry. I could say angry. I think because of how they died.
Angry or confused
or both.
It's just the fact that there was no closure.
Yeah, for sure.
Not that everyone, without tragedy gets closure, but
well, that's also part of it too. A lot of these bodies, in the beginning at least, didn't get to have their traditional funeral.
Yeah,
which is a huge part of their culture,
right? And then also, like it's like a very condensed tragedy where it's huge, but it's also all this sorrow, all this death in one defined big area.
It's a district.
Yeah. So I feel like if you believe in that type of collection of energy and that negative energy and what that could produce, or even what that could attract, like it could also attract things that didn't die in the tsunami but are attracted to the negative energy. Yeah. So there could be things that weren't even like real human spirits that died that are.
That's terrifying. That is a terrifying thought.
For like 3 months, Okihara was pretty good. Everything left Okihara to go haunt other people, and they were like,
"That's really scary." The idea that
like I hiked it 5 times in that month. It was great.
That it's just not. It's not just human spirits.
There's nothing to back that up. But I'm just saying
it's an interesting idea because they're drawn. Those type of spirits could be drawn to negative energy, and there's so much here.
Yeah. So. And I think it's also like the sum versus the parts. So I'm going to go believable on this. Not saying that I think everything you just said is real.
Yeah.
Like I said, it could be the reflection in the water. And I know that they do, lean on different psychics and things like that, mediums to relay what people are experiencing and seeing. But I believe in ghosts, and I believe in how tragedies can lead to wandering spirits, so to speak. So I think even if there was one case that was legitimately due to this tsunami, which I don't think is hard to believe when you find out how many people died and the horrifying ways that they died, I have no problem going believable for at least some of it.
Yeah, no, it's a terrible negative thing that happened. Over 20,000 people died. Mm-hmm. I think with that much confusion and frustration and anger at a sudden unexpected death, I think you're bound to have some kind of phenomenon that is supernatural because it's tied to emotions. I think if those emotions are left unchecked, then you're bound to have something like this happen. So I think I go believable as well. So that was the ghost of the Japanese tsunami, 2011, March 11th. A couple days after your birthday. How old did you turn?
In 2011?
Yeah.
19.
19. Wow.
19. I remember this. Like, it wasn't, obviously it didn't hit me incredibly hard, but I remember reading articles about it and just, like, I didn't understand the gravity. I was 19, and also, like, I hate to say it, it didn't happen here. So I feel like when you're that young and you're self-absorbed, self-absorbed.
I remember it as well.
Yeah, it was like big news, and it's horrifying, but you kind of just, like, go about your day in the United States, I think.
You're like, huh.
That sucks.
That's terrible.
That's terrible, yeah. It's, I feel like when it comes to things like that, and most bad things, you really have to, like, for me, like, I have to sit, like, in a quiet space, whether I'm listening to music or not, and I have to really think about it. Like, I have to put myself there. And, I mean, it sucks as a human that I can't feel that type of empathy. And I do feel empathy, but I feel like to really grasp it, like, I think I talked to you about this. I don't even know if this was our old podcast or if this was Believing the Bizarre. I think it was Believing the Bizarre, but I could be wrong. Like, I had 2 days where I legitimately got depressed about 9/11, and I started watching all these documentaries on my own. Like, it hit us hard. It was always a big deal. I mean, but I was like, I think it was in 5th grade.
We talked about it during this during the 9/11 episode.
Yeah, like, I was so young. Like, I didn't feel like I mean, I was like, I'm trying to watch SpongeBob. Why is this? But I mean, like, I knew something bad happened. Yeah, I knew it was sad. But it took me, like 4 or 5 years ago, or maybe I guess less than that, where I, like, really dove into documentaries for hours at a time and just imagining, like, what it felt like to know someone, what it would have been like to be in the plane, what it would have been like to be on there. And it just, like, brings you to this moment of just, like, sorrow and just, like hopelessness, right? And I feel like translating that to this tsunami where whether you knew it was going to happen right before, or you found, you had a friend visiting there for the day, or you had someone stationed there, or not stationed, but work, whatever, or somebody just moved there, and then you find out this happens, and 20,000 died, and you're like, very, very likely you could have lost this person forever. Like that's the type of thing where I feel like you have to make a conceited effort to put yourself in that position, or maybe just me. Maybe some people already feel that, but I feel like you can acknowledge something is sad without like going down a rabbit hole. So I think sometimes it can be healthy to do that to really get a better understanding.
I agree. I think you're right. It's good to connect emotionally, but not good to lose yourself.
Yeah. That's when you're like, they're talking about like right before the second plane hit, and then there's like an ad break. It's like Papa John's pizza, better ingredients, Papa John's. You're like, whoa.
Brings it way
like,
out of it.
Like, whoa.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Or worst case scenario, you could now associate Papa John's to 9/11.
Oh, jeez.
But this catastrophe definitely is something terrible that happened in Japan. It's scarred, maimed the nation in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good to talk about, even in this platform, about what kind of happened.
Yeah. So if you liked this episode, if you're liking the podcast and you haven't reviewed yet, go to Apple Podcasts, leave 5-star, leave your thoughts, your opinions. If you're listening on Spotify, leave a 5-star rating. You'll see what did you think of this episode? Let us know your thoughts. We read them, we publish them, and then everyone else can read them.
And you're enjoying this episode. That's great. Thank you for leaving a review. We appreciate it. And you want more content. You've somehow listened to all 100-something episodes of this at this point, and you want to get more. Do you know where to get that, Tyler?
Maybe the Patreon.
I think the Patreon. There's a lot of fun stuff on Patreon. There's games. There's more about us. There's more about spooky stuff. You can get anything you really want.
We have movies, hangouts, quizzes, extra bonus content, segments, T-shirts if you're in a dedicated tier.
I'd say we're probably 2 available on Patreon.
I know. Y'all get too much of us.
Yeah.
I need some me time. I'm just kidding. We love getting together and putting out the bonus content. Otherwise, hint, hint, we wouldn't do it.
Exactly. Right. We would not. We put a lot on there.
Yeah. So check it out if you're liking the podcast and if you want a little bit more. But in the meantime, thank you so much for listening. As always, I'm Tyler.
And I'm Charlie.
And catch us next week on Believing the Bizarre,
a podcast as bizarre as you are.